The spotlight burns white-hot against Johnny Cash's face, and for a moment he can't tell if the heat comes from the stage lights or from somewhere deeper, some fire that's been consuming him from the inside out for months now. The crowd at the State Fair Music Hall roars, 3,000 voices blending into a single animal sound that washes over him like a wave. He grips the microphone stand to steady himself, knuckles white, and feels the familiar tremor in his hands. Behind him, Luther Perkins picks out the opening notes on his electric guitar, that boom-chicka-boom sound that's become as recognizable as Johnny's own voice. Marshall Grant's bass thrums low and steady, a heartbeat, the Tennessee 2. They've been with him since the beginning, back when none of them knew what they were doing, when they were just three guys from Memphis trying to make something out of nothing. But tonight feels different. Tonight something's wrong. Johnny opens his mouth to sing, and the words catch in his throat. His vision blurs at the edges. The pills he took backstage, how many was it? 4? 6? He's lost count. The little white tablets that keep him moving, keep him sharp, keep him from having to feel anything real. Except now they're not keeping him sharp at all. Now they're turning the world into something liquid and strange, and he's trying to hold on to the microphone stand like it's the only solid thing left in the universe. The audience doesn't notice. Not yet. They see what they came to see, the man in black, 6 feet 2 inches of lean darkness, wrapped in a charcoal suit that's soaked through with sweat. They see the face they know from album covers and television screens, the strong jaw, the deep-set eyes, the mouth that can shift from a gentle smile to something hard and unforgiving in the space of a heartbeat. They don't see the man underneath, the one who's barely holding on. He forces the first verse out, his voice rougher than it should be, catching on the consonants. The song is one they all know, one he could sing in his sleep, except he's not sure he's not sleeping now. Everything has taken on that dream-like quality, edges soft and bleeding into one another. The crowd sings along with the chorus, and their voices seem to come from very far away, through water or thick glass. Somewhere in the wings, he knows Saul Holiff is watching. His manager, always watching, always calculating, always trying to figure out how to keep the Johnny Cash machine running, despite Johnny's best efforts to destroy it. Saul, with his nervous energy and his ledgers, and his constant worry about bookings and contracts, and all the machinery of success that Johnny finds increasingly unbearable. The song ends. Applause crashes over him. He should say something to the audience, some easy banter, some joke. His mouth moves, words come out, but he's not entirely sure what he's saying. Something about being glad to be in Texas. Something about the next song. The crowd laughs. Good, that's good. Keep them happy. Keep them from seeing. Luther starts the next number, and Johnny turns toward him, trying to focus. His friend's face is concerned, eyes asking a question Johnny doesn't want to answer. They've been through this before, too many times before. The missed cues, the slurred words, the nights when Johnny barely makes it through the set. Luther's loyalty is absolute, but Johnny can see it wearing on him, see the way it ages him. The stage tilts slightly, or maybe Johnny tilts. He catches himself, adjusts his stance, tries to look intentional about it. The microphone stand is his anchor. He wraps both hands around it now, no longer holding his guitar, letting it hang from its strap against his chest. His fingers find the cool metal, grip it hard enough to hurt. And that's when he sees them. 2 men in uniform moving through the crowd toward the stage. Dallas Police Department, navy blue shirts, badges catching the light. One of them, the taller one, has his hand resting on his belt near his handcuffs. They're not rushing, not making a scene, but they're moving with purpose, their eyes locked on Johnny. His heart, already racing from the amphetamines, kicks into a higher gear. The pills and the adrenaline create a toxic cocktail in his bloodstream, and suddenly he's more awake than he's been in hours, clarity cutting through the fog like a knife. He knows why they're here, of course he knows. The incident at the airport 3 days ago, El Paso. He'd been so careful, thought he'd gotten away with it. 700 pills hidden in his guitar case, and the customs agent who'd looked right at them and somehow, miraculously, hadn't seen them. Johnny had walked through that terminal feeling invincible, feeling like maybe God was looking out for him after all. Maybe there was still some grace left for a man like him. But God's grace, he's learning, has limits. The officers reach the stage. The song is still going, Luther and Marshall playing on, unaware of what's unfolding. The crowd is still clapping, still singing along, still believing in the show. Johnny keeps singing too, because what else can he do? His voice comes out steady now, steadier than it should, the way it always does when his back is against the wall. Some part of him, some performer's instinct developed over years of live shows, takes over and carries him forward. The taller officer climbs the stage steps. The house lights are down, the spotlight on Johnny so bright that most of the audience probably can't see the police uniforms, can't see what's happening. But Johnny sees. He sees everything with a terrible clarity. He finishes the verse. The officer is 10 feet away now, waiting at the edge of the stage, professional and patient, not making a scene, not yet, giving Johnny a chance to finish with some dignity. And Johnny, God help him, is grateful for that small mercy. The final chorus. His voice rings out strong and true, and for a moment he's not thinking about the pills or the arrest or the fact that his career might be ending right here, right now, on a stage in Dallas with 3,000 witnesses. For a moment he's just a singer doing what he was born to do, his voice carrying across the hall and touching something in the hearts of the people listening. The song ends. The applause is thunderous. Johnny sets down the microphone. He turns to face the officer. The man is young, maybe 30, with a serious face and eyes that have seen too much for his age. A veteran, Johnny thinks. Career, probably. Someone who knows about darkness, about the things men do when they're desperate. The officer speaks quietly, his voice barely audible over the crowd noise. His words are formal, practiced, the Miranda warning that Johnny has heard before and never thought he'd hear again. The right to remain silent, the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Behind him, Luther has stopped playing. The crowd noise is starting to change, confusion rippling through it like wind across water. People are beginning to understand that something is wrong, that this isn't part of the show. The officer produces the handcuffs. They catch the stage lights, chrome gleaming. He's gentle about it, his movements practiced and professional. He asks Johnny to turn around, to put his hands behind his back. And Johnny does. What else can he do? He's tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending that everything is fine when it's all falling apart. The metal is cold against his wrists. The click of the cuffs locking into place sounds impossibly loud, louder than the amplifiers, louder than the crowd, louder than his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The audience reaction is immediate and visceral. Confusion turns to shock, shock to outrage. People are on their feet, shouting. Some are booing the police, some are calling out to Johnny, asking what's happening, demanding explanations. A few, he's sure, are probably satisfied, thinking he's finally getting what he deserves, that this is justice for all the times he's shown up late or too intoxicated to perform, all the cancelled shows, all the disappointment. The second officer has joined the first now, and together they begin to escort Johnny off the stage. He walks between them, his head up, trying to maintain some shred of dignity. The house lights come up, and now everyone can see clearly. Johnny Cash, the man in black, being led away in handcuffs. As they pass Luther, Johnny catches his friend's eye. The expression on Luther's face is worse than anger, worse than disappointment. It's a kind of resigned sadness, the look of someone who's been watching a car crash in slow motion and has finally seen the impact. Marshall stands frozen at his base, his hands still on the strings, looking lost. The officer's hand on Johnny's arm is firm, but not rough, as they guide him down the stage steps. The crowd is a chaos of noise now, people pressing forward, cameras flashing. In 1965, this is the kind of scandal that ends careers. This is the kind of thing that gets you blacklisted, shut out, forgotten. The Nashville establishment has been looking for a reason to write him off, and here it is, served up on a silver platter. They move through the backstage area, past stagehand and venue staff, who stare with wide eyes. Someone, somewhere, is crying. Johnny thinks it might be one of the backup singers, but he can't be sure. His mind is racing now, running through possibilities, consequences, futures that are crumbling before they can even form. Saul appears, materializing out of the shadows, his face pale and drawn. He's talking rapidly, words tumbling over each other, trying to negotiate, trying to fix this. But there's nothing to fix. The warrant is real, the evidence is real, the arrest is real. This isn't something that can be smoothed over with phone calls and favors. The backstage door opens onto a parking area, and the cool October air hits Johnny's face like a slap. After the heat of the stage, the sweat and lights and close bodies, the outside world feels shockingly real. Real in a way that nothing has felt real for months, maybe years. A police car waits, its lights off, trying to keep things quiet. But there are already people gathering, fans who've somehow found their way back here, photographers who have that sixth sense for scandal. The flashbulbs pop, white explosions in the darkness, each one capturing this moment, preserving it forever. Johnny Cash being put into a police car, Johnny Cash arrested, Johnny Cash destroyed. The officer opens the back door of the cruiser. He puts his hand on top of Johnny's head, guiding him down and into the back seat the way they do, protecting the suspect from hitting his head on the door frame. Even now, even in this moment, there's a certain care to it, a recognition of human dignity. Johnny sits. The door closes. The sound of it shutting is final, absolute. Through the window, he can see Saul still talking to the other officer, gesturing wildly, his face animated with desperation. He can see the small crowd of onlookers, their faces pressed close, trying to see inside the car, trying to catch a glimpse of the fallen star. And he can see Luther standing in the backstage doorway, his guitar still strapped around his neck, watching as the police car begins to pull away. The last thing Johnny sees before they turn the corner is his friend raising one hand in a gesture that might be goodbye or might be something else entirely, a blessing maybe, or a prayer. The pills are wearing off now, the crash beginning. His hands shake in the cuffs, his head pounds, his mouth is dry as dust, throat raw from singing. Every part of him aches with a deep, bone-level exhaustion that has nothing to do with the performance and everything to do with the life he's been living, the choices he's been making, the person he's been becoming. The officer in the passenger seat turns to look at him through the metal grate that separates the front from the back. His face is neutral, professionally blank, but his eyes hold something that might be sympathy. You have the right to remain silent, but Johnny knows that silence is no longer an option. The truth is coming out, all of it, every pill, every lie, every moment of weakness he's tried so hard to hide. The facade is cracking, and there's no way to put it back together. The Dallas Police Department headquarters is a squat concrete building on Harwood Street, institutional and cold. The car pulls into the underground garage, away from any additional cameras or crowds. This part, at least, will be private. Small mercies. They process him efficiently, fingerprints, photographs, the long form where they catalogue his personal effects, his wallet with $47 and a photograph of his daughters tucked behind his driver's license, his wedding ring, which he slides off his finger and watches them drop into a manila envelope, his belt, his boots, his dignity. The holding cell is cleaner than some he's been in, but that doesn't make it any less a cage. The bars are painted grey. The bench bolted to the wall is cold metal, covered with a thin vinyl pad. There's a toilet in the corner, no privacy. The light overhead buzzes, a fluorescent hum that makes his headache worse. They remove the handcuffs before they lock the door. The relief in his wrists is immediate and exquisite. He rubs the red marks the metal left behind, feels the blood flowing back into his hands. He's alone. For the first time in hours, days maybe, he's completely alone. No band, no manager, no crowd, no pills, no distractions. Just Johnny Cash and the truth, locked together in a 10-by-8 cell. He sits on the bench. The metal is cold through his pants. The cell smells of disinfectant and desperation, that particular odor of a place where people wait to learn their fate. And Johnny waits. Time moves strangely in a holding cell. Minutes stretch into hours or collapse into seconds. He has no watch, no window to gauge the passage of night into morning, just the fluorescent light and the occasional sound of footsteps in the corridor, voices from other cells, the clang of doors opening and closing somewhere in the distance. His mind, freed from the drugs, begins to work in ways it hasn't in months. Memories surface, sharp and clear. His childhood in Dyess, Arkansas, the poverty that ground his family down to nothing and somehow forged them into something stronger. His brother Jack, dead at 15, the loss that shaped everything that came after. The way his mother's face looked when she sang hymns in the kitchen, that pure light of faith that Johnny has been running from and toward his whole life. He thinks about the pills. When did it start? After the car accident in '61. That's the official story, the one he tells himself. The doctor prescribed amphetamines for the pain and to keep him alert during the endless string of shows. 200 concerts a year, sometimes more, driving from town to town in cars and buses, barely sleeping, always performing. The pills made it possible. The pills made it bearable. Except somewhere along the way, the pills stopped being a solution and became the problem. 1 became 2, became 4, became however many it took to feel normal. And normal kept changing, kept receding, kept requiring more and more until there was no normal left at all, just the pills and the need for more pills. He thinks about June Carter, with her dark eyes and a quick laugh and her stubborn refusal to give up on him, no matter how hard he tries to push her away. She's been touring with him, singing duets, bringing light to the darkness he carries. She knows about the pills. Everyone knows about the pills. But June sees through the pills to something underneath, some core of goodness she insists is still there, buried beneath all the mistakes and bad choices. He doesn't believe her. He hasn't believed her for a long time. The cell door clangs open. A guard appears, an older man with grey hair and a weathered face. He tells Johnny he has a visitor. Attorney, probably. Saul must have called someone, pulled whatever strings he could pull. But when they lead him to the interview room, it's not a lawyer waiting on the other side of the table. It's a man in his 50s, wearing a rumpled suit and a badge clipped to his belt. FBI. Special Agent Thomas Hendricks introduces himself with a handshake that's surprisingly warm. He has the kind of face that's seen everything and been surprised by nothing. He gestures for Johnny to sit, then takes the seat across from him, setting a manila folder on the table between them. The interview room is small and windowless, painted institutional beige. A mirror on one wall that's obviously two-way glass. A recording device sits on the table, its reels slowly turning, capturing everything. Agent Hendricks opens the folder. Inside are photographs, documents, transcripts, the evidence of Johnny's crime, laid out in black and white. The airport in El Paso 3 days ago, the customs search that should have found the pills, but didn't. Except it did. The agent who'd waved Johnny through had seen the pills, seen them clearly. He just hadn't stopped Johnny. Because he was supposed to let him pass. Because they were building a case, following the supply chain, trying to figure out where all these pills were coming from and who else was involved. They'd been watching him for months, Hendricks explains, following his movements, documenting his purchases, building a file, not just on Johnny, but on the whole network. The doctors who wrote prescriptions without asking questions, the pharmacies that filled them, the dealers who operated in the grey areas between legal and illegal. Johnny sits very still and listens. The full scope of his situation becomes clear piece by piece. This isn't just about possession. This is about trafficking, conspiracy, potentially interstate drug distribution. The kind of charges that don't go away with a fine and a slap on the wrist. The kind of charges that come with years in federal prison. Hendricks watches him carefully as he speaks, gauging reactions, looking for something. After laying out the charges, the evidence, the potential consequences, he leans back in his chair and asks a question. How much does Johnny want to help himself? The implication is clear. They want information, they want names, they want Johnny to cooperate, to become part of their investigation, to help them take down the network that's been feeding his addiction. And in exchange, they can make this easier. Not disappear, that's not possible now, not after the very public arrest, but easier. Reduced charges, probation instead of prison time, a chance to put this behind him and move forward with his life and career. Johnny looks at the photographs spread across the table. His own face stares back at him from multiple angles, surveillance photos taken without his knowledge. Him leaving pharmacies, him meeting with people whose names he barely remembers, him living his life while invisible observers documented every move. He thinks about the doctors and dealers whose names Hendricks wants. Some of them are just trying to make a living, operating in the cracks of the system. Some of them are predators who saw Johnny's desperation and exploited it. He thinks about the consequences of cooperation, what it would mean to turn on them, to save himself at their expense. He thinks about his daughters, Roseanne, Kathy, Cindy, and Tara. What do they need from him? A father who's alive and free but tainted by betrayal, or a father who's locked away but kept his integrity? He thinks about his own father, Ray Cash, hard as Arkansas stone, a man who survived the Depression and taught his children that you do what's right even when it costs you. What would his father say about cooperation, about making deals to save your own skin? The silence stretches. Hendricks waits patiently. He's done this before, knows how to let silence do its work, how to give people space to make the decisions they need to make. Finally, Johnny speaks. His voice is rough, tired, but clear. He won't give them names. He won't cooperate. What he did on his own. He's responsible for his choices, his addiction, his crimes. He won't drag others down to save himself. Hendricks nods slowly, as if this is the answer he expected, maybe even the answer he hoped for. He gathers up the photographs, closes the folder, and stands. The consequences, he reminds Johnny, will be severe. This isn't going away. The charges are real and serious. Without cooperation, without mitigation, Johnny is looking at significant prison time. Johnny nods. He understands. The guard escorts him back to his cell. The door clangs shut again. The fluorescent light continues its eternal buzzing, and Johnny sits on the cold metal bench, his future uncertain, his past inescapable, his present reduced to this cage. But something has changed. Some small shift has occurred in the hours since his arrest. The pills have worn off completely now, leaving him with the clarity of sobriety he's been avoiding for months. His thoughts are his own again, sharp and painful, but his own. He thinks about that moment on stage, just before the officers arrived, the song, his voice, the connection with the audience, that pure thing that exists in the space between performer and listener, that transcendent moment when music becomes something more than just sound. That's real, that matters. Everything else, the fame and the money and the endless tours and the pills he needed to keep going, all of that is built on top of that fundamental truth. Somewhere he lost sight of it. Somewhere in the machine of success, he forgot why he started singing in the first place, the joy of it, the necessity of it, the way music could touch something deep in the human soul and bring comfort or understanding, or simply the knowledge that someone else has felt what you're feeling. The night passes slowly. Johnny doesn't sleep. He sits on the bench and watches the shadows that don't exist in the fluorescent light. He prays, or tries to, though the words feel rusty and inadequate. He's been running from God almost as hard as he's been running from himself, and he's not sure God is still listening. But he tries anyway, because what else is there to do in a cell at 3 a.m. when your life is falling apart and all your choices have led you to this particular cage? Morning comes, though Johnny only knows it when they bring breakfast. A tray with scrambled eggs that taste like cardboard, toast that's gone cold, coffee that's surprisingly good. He eats because his body demands it, the crash from the pills leaving him hollow and shaking. Saul arrives around 9. They bring Johnny to the interview room again, and his manager is pacing the small space like a caged animal. His hair is disheveled, his clothes rumpled. He looks like he hasn't slept. The conversation is difficult. Saul is angry and frightened, and trying to solve a problem that can't be solved with phone calls or money or connections. He's already been working on it, he explains. Called every lawyer he knows, reached out to everyone who might be able to help. But the situation is bad. The public arrest, the FBI involvement, the complete absence of deniability. Johnny listens quietly. He knows Saul is right. He knows the career they've built together is crumbling. The bookings will be cancelled. The record label will drop him. Radio stations will stop playing his music. The path forward looks impossible. But through Saul's panic, Johnny feels something unexpected. Not fear exactly, but something close to relief. The secret is out. The performance is over. He doesn't have to pretend anymore. He tells Saul about the FBI's offer, about his refusal to cooperate. Saul is incredulous, then furious. How could Johnny throw away that chance? How could he choose prison over freedom, over his career, over his family? Johnny doesn't have a good answer. Just that some things matter more than convenience, some lines you don't cross, even to save yourself. Saul slumps in his chair, the fight going out of him. He looks old suddenly, worn down by months of trying to manage the unmanageable. He asks Johnny what he wants Saul to do now. "Find me a good lawyer," Johnny says, "someone who can help me face this thing with some dignity, and call June." The lawyers come. They talk about defense strategies, about character witnesses, about the difference between possession and intent to distribute. They explain that Johnny's fame is a double-edged sword. It means the prosecutors will want to make an example of him, but it also means the public might be sympathetic if they can frame the narrative right. It all feels distant and abstract. Legal maneuvering, courtroom theater. Johnny listens and nods and signs where they tell him to sign, but his mind is elsewhere. They release him on bail 3 days later. Saul puts up the money, a staggering amount that makes Johnny's stomach turn. Outside the courthouse, photographers swarm like locusts, their cameras clicking in a frenzied chorus. Johnny keeps his head down, moves quickly to the waiting car. The drive back to his hotel is silent. Saul doesn't know what to say. The radio is turned off, but Johnny knows what they'd hear if it was on. His arrest is national news. The man in black caught smuggling drugs. Every station, every newspaper, every tongue in Nashville wagging with the scandal. His hotel room feels like another kind of cell. The walls close in. He stands at the window and looks down at Dallas spread out below, the city going about its business, indifferent to his crisis. Somewhere down there, people are living normal lives, going to work, coming home to families, dealing with ordinary problems. He envies them. June calls that evening. Her voice on the phone is calm and steady, that bedrock strength she carries. She doesn't lecture or scold. She just asks if he's okay, if there's anything she can do. He tells her he's fine, which is a lie, and she lets him lie because that's what he needs right now. Before she hangs up, she tells him something. She says that people make mistakes, that God's grace is bigger than any mistake, that there's always a path forward if you're brave enough to look for it. She says she believes in him, in the man underneath the addiction and the fear. Johnny thanks her and hangs up. He sits on the edge of the hotel bed and puts his head in his hands. The trial, when it comes, is a media circus. The courtroom is packed with reporters, fans, curiosity seekers. Johnny sits at the defense table in a dark suit, his hands folded, his expression carefully neutral. The lawyers do their work, presenting their case, calling character witnesses who testify to Johnny's good character and struggles. The prosecution paints a different picture, an entitled celebrity who thinks the law doesn't apply to him, a drug smuggler who used his fame as cover for illegal activity. They present the photographs, the documentation, the undeniable evidence of guilt. Johnny doesn't testify. His lawyers advise against it, and he agrees. What would he say? That he was weak, that he was desperate, that the pills were the only thing keeping him functioning in a life that had become unbearable? None of that changes the facts. He broke the law. He got caught. Now he has to face the consequences. The jury deliberates for 6 hours. When they return, their faces are somber. The verdict is guilty on all counts. The sentencing comes 2 weeks later. The judge is a stern man in his 60s, his face carved with deep lines. He speaks at length about responsibility, about the trust that society places in public figures, about the dangers of drug abuse. He talks about mercy and justice and the need to balance both. The sentence is suspended. 3 years probation, a substantial fine, mandatory drug treatment. No prison time, but the conviction stands. Johnny Cash is now a convicted felon. The relief should be overwhelming, but Johnny just feels numb. He stands when the judge tells him to. He answers when spoken to. He walks out of the courtroom with his lawyers on either side. The flash of cameras, the shouted questions, the chaos of public judgment. Back at the hotel, Saul breaks open a bottle of expensive whiskey to celebrate. They avoided prison. They salvage something from the wreckage. The career can be rebuilt, given time and effort and the right image rehabilitation. Johnny pours the whiskey down the sink. The look on Saul's face would be funny if it wasn't so sad. That night, alone again, Johnny makes a decision. Not a grand declaration or a dramatic moment, just a quiet choice made in the privacy of his own mind. He's done. Done with the pills, done with the running, done with the performance. Whatever happens next, whatever the cost, he's going to face it clean. He finds a treatment program willing to take him. A small facility in Tennessee, quiet and discreet. He checks himself in the next morning, no fanfare, no press release, just Johnny Cash and a duffel bag and the long, hard road ahead. Detox is hell. His body rebels against the absence of the drugs it's become dependent on. He shakes, he sweats, he can't sleep, can't eat, can't think straight. His mind plays tricks on him, showing him things that aren't there, tormenting him with memories and regrets. The staff watches him carefully, make sure he doesn't hurt himself, but they can't make it easier. This is the price, and he has to pay it. June visits. She sits beside his bed and reads to him when he can't focus enough to read himself. She brings flowers that brighten the sterile room. She doesn't judge, doesn't say "I told you so," doesn't ask questions he can't answer. She's just there, steady and patient and impossible to shake. Luther visits too. His old friend looks uncomfortable in the clinical setting, his guitar left behind for once. They don't talk much. They don't need to. Luther's presence is enough. That loyalty that has survived everything, that friendship that was built in honky-tonks and recording studios and 1,000 miles of highway. Slowly, day by day, Johnny begins to heal. The physical symptoms ease, his mind clears, the world comes back into focus, sharp and real in a way it hasn't been in years. He starts to remember who he was before the pills, before the desperation, before everything went sideways. The program includes counseling, long sessions with a doctor who asks uncomfortable questions and doesn't accept easy answers. Johnny talks about his childhood, about Jack's death and the guilt he's carried ever since. About his fear of failure, his need for control, his inability to deal with the pressure of success, about the pills as a solution that became a trap. The doctor listens and asks more questions and helps Johnny start to understand the patterns, the cycles, the ways he's been sabotaging himself. It's painful work, excavating the layers of denial and self-deception. But it's necessary. Understanding isn't enough, but it's a start. 3 months pass. Spring turns to summer. The treatment program lets him have a guitar, and he begins to write again. Songs come slowly at first, tentative and uncertain, then more freely. Music about darkness and redemption, about falling and getting back up, about the long road home. The doctors say he's ready to leave. Ready is a complicated word, but Johnny understands what they mean. He's learned tools, developed coping mechanisms, created a support structure. The work isn't finished, won't ever be finished, but he can continue it on the outside. June is waiting when he walks out of the facility. She's leaning against her car in the parking lot, wearing a yellow sundress and sunglasses, looking like hope itself. Johnny stops when he sees her, suddenly uncertain. Does she know how broken he still is? How much work remains? She pushes off from the car and walks toward him, and when she's close enough, he can see she's crying, but she's smiling too, that impossible combination of grief and joy that only June can pull off. She takes his hands in hers and tells him she's proud of him. They drive back to Nashville together. The radio is on, and ironically, one of Johnny's songs comes on. An old one, from before everything fell apart. His voice fills the car, strong and true, and he listens to it as if hearing himself for the first time. That person in the recording, that confident performer, feels like a stranger. But maybe, with time and work and grace, he can find his way back to something like that. Not the same, but something honest. The Nashville music community is waiting to see what he'll do next. Some are supportive, ready to forgive and forget. Others are skeptical, convinced he's washed up, finished. The record label is willing to give him another chance, but they want proof he can still deliver, still perform, still be Johnny Cash. He books a small show at a club on Lower Broadway. Nothing fancy, just Johnny and his guitar and whoever wants to show up. The night of the performance, he stands backstage and feels the old familiar nerves. But they're different now. Not the chemical anxiety of pills, but genuine excitement mixed with fear. This is real. No artificial courage, no pharmaceutical safety net. Just him and the music. The club is packed. Word got out somehow, and the small venue is filled beyond capacity, with people curious to see the fallen star, to witness either redemption or catastrophe. Johnny can feel their expectations pressing in, their judgment. He walks on stage. The spotlight finds him. For a moment he's transported back to Dallas, to that night when everything changed. But this time, when he grips the microphone stand, his hands are steady. This time, when he opens his mouth to sing, the words come clear and strong. He sings the old songs and the new ones. He talks between numbers, honest and direct, not hiding his mistakes or pretending the arrest didn't happen. He tells them he's been to hell and back, that he's still fighting, that he's grateful for the chance to be standing here at all. The audience listens in rapt silence. When he finishes the last song, the applause is thunderous, not polite or obligatory, but genuine and warm. They've witnessed something real, something vulnerable and honest and human. Backstage afterward, Saul is beaming. He's already fielding calls from venues wanting to book Johnny, from radio stations willing to play his music again. The career can be salvaged. The comeback is beginning. But Johnny knows the real work is just starting. The performances and recordings and tours are one thing. Staying clean, facing each day without the pills, learning to deal with pressure and stress and disappointment without chemical escape. That's the real challenge, and it will be with him for the rest of his life. June finds him in the dressing room. She's been watching from the wings, and her face is radiant. She doesn't say anything, just wraps her arms around him and holds on tight. In that embrace, Johnny feels something he hasn't felt in years. Safety, peace, home. The months that follow are a slow rebuilding. Johnny works with his probation officer, meeting regularly, submitting to random drug tests, proving his commitment to staying clean. Each clean test feels like a small victory, evidence that change is possible. He records a new album. The sessions are different from anything he's done before. No marathon recording sessions fueled by amphetamines. No manic energy pushing him through take after take. Just careful, deliberate work, building something honest and real. The songs reflect his journey, the darkness and the struggle toward light. His voice carries a new depth, born from genuine suffering and genuine hope. The album is called At Folsom Prison. The concept comes from a conversation with Saul, a way to connect with an audience that understands redemption, that knows about second chances. Inmates, men who've made mistakes and are paying for them, men who might see themselves in Johnny's story. The show is scheduled for January 1968, more than 2 years after the arrest in Dallas. 2 years of sobriety, of work, of slowly rebuilding trust with himself and everyone around him. 2 years of waking up every morning and choosing, consciously choosing, not to take the pills. Folsom State Prison sits in the California foothills, a maximum security facility housing some of the most dangerous men in the state. The administration is cautious about allowing the performance, worried about security, about the message it might send. But they agree, finally, recognizing that music can reach places that punishment can't. Johnny arrives at the prison with June and the band. The guards search everything, every piece of equipment, every instrument case. No chances, no trust. Johnny understands. He's been on the other side of that suspicion, knows what it feels like to be seen as a threat. The prison cafeteria has been converted into a concert venue. Rows of tables where inmates can sit, a small stage area set up at one end. Security is heavy, guards positioned around the perimeter, watching everything. The atmosphere is tense, crackling with barely contained energy. The inmates file in, and Johnny watches them. Men in blue denim, their faces hard, their eyes guarded. Some young, some old, all carrying the weight of their choices. They look at Johnny with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. He's a celebrity, someone from the outside world, someone who can leave when the performance is over. What does he know about their reality? But Johnny sees himself in their faces. Not the same circumstances, not the same crimes, but the same fundamental struggle. The weight of guilt, the desire for redemption, the question of whether a person can change or whether the past defines them forever. He walks on stage. The inmates applaud, a sound like thunder in the enclosed space. Johnny grips the microphone, feels that old familiar weight, but now it feels different. Not a lifeline to keep from drowning, but a tool to build a bridge. He starts with Folsom Prison Blues, the song he wrote years ago, imagining what it might feel like to be locked up. Except now he knows, not prison exactly, but captivity of another kind. The prison of addiction, of shame, of believing you're beyond saving. His voice rings out strong and clear, and the inmates respond immediately. They hear the authenticity in every word, the understanding that goes deeper than performance. This isn't someone singing at them, but someone singing with them, someone who knows. Between songs, Johnny talks. He tells them about Dallas, about being arrested on stage, about the handcuffs and the cell, and the certainty that his life was over. He doesn't make it sound romantic or adventurous. He tells the truth, the ugly truth, about fear and shame and hitting bottom. And he tells them about getting back up, about the choice to fight, to change, to believe that the story doesn't end with the mistake, about the people who believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, about grace, that unearned gift that makes redemption possible. The inmates lean forward, listening with an intensity that's almost physical. Some have tears on their faces. Others sit stone-faced, but their eyes are engaged, present. They're hearing something they need to hear, something the world outside rarely tells them, that they matter, that they can change, that their past doesn't have to define their future. June joins him for a duet, her voice blending with his in perfect harmony. The inmates watch her with reverence, this woman who represents something beyond their reach, beauty and goodness and hope. When she smiles at them, really smiles, some of them smile back, and for a moment the hardness in their faces cracks, revealing the men underneath. The final song is Greystone Chapel, written by an inmate, a recognition that these men have voices worth hearing, stories worth telling. Johnny sings it with everything he has, pouring all his understanding of darkness and longing for light into every line. When the song ends, the applause is deafening. The inmates are on their feet, clapping and shouting, and some of the guards are clapping too, caught up in the moment. Johnny stands on stage and looks out at these men, his brothers in brokenness, and feels something shift inside him, a sense of purpose, of calling, of understanding why he survived when he so easily could have been destroyed. The recording captured it all. Every song, every moment of connection, every raw, honest exchange between performer and audience. When the album is released later that year, it becomes a phenomenon. Not just a comeback, but a reinvention. Johnny Cash as prophet of redemption, voice for the voiceless, champion of the forgotten. The success is overwhelming. The album goes gold, then platinum. Radio stations that had blacklisted him are now playing his music constantly. Venues that had refused to book him are now clamoring for dates. The man in black is back, but he's different now, carrying scars and wisdom earned through genuine suffering. But the real success, the one that matters, is quieter and more personal. It's waking up clean every morning. It's being present for his daughters, really present, not distracted or chemically altered or consumed by shame. It's the relationship with June deepening, built on honesty and trust, rather than need and codependence. He proposes to her on stage in Canada, in front of thousands of people. It's spontaneous and terrifying and exactly right. She says yes, and the crowd erupts, and Johnny feels like maybe, finally, he's building something that will last. They marry in March 1968, and Johnny promises her and God and himself that he'll stay clean, that he'll be the man she deserves, that he'll fight every day to be worthy of the grace he's been given. It's a promise he'll spend the rest of his life keeping, one day at a time. The arrest in Dallas becomes part of his legend, but not in the way he expected, not as scandal or downfall, but as the turning point, the moment when everything had to break before it could be rebuilt. The handcuffs on stage, the cell, the choice to face consequences rather than run. These become the foundation of a different kind of story, one about redemption rather than ruin. Years later, interviewed about that night, Johnny will speak about it with surprising gratitude. Not for the arrest itself, but for what it forced him to confront. The pills, the addiction, the lie he'd been living. He needed to hit bottom, he'll say, needed the facade to completely crumble before he could start building something real. The interviewer will ask if he regrets it, the arrest, the public humiliation, the damage to his career. Johnny will pause, considering the question carefully. Then he'll say that he regrets the pain he caused others, the people who believed in him and watched him self-destruct. But the arrest, that might have saved his life. Because in that cell in Dallas, stripped of everything artificial, reduced to just himself and his choices, Johnny Cash found something he'd been missing for years. Not redemption, not yet, but the possibility of redemption. The understanding that he could change, that the story wasn't over, that grace was available if he was willing to reach for it. The handcuffs weren't just restraint. They were, in a strange way, liberation. Liberation from the performance, from the pretense, from the exhausting work of hiding his addiction and pretending everything was fine. Once the secret was out, once everyone knew, he didn't have to hide anymore. He could be honest about his struggle, could ask for help, could start the long, hard work of healing. And the stage, that place where he'd been arrested, humiliated, brought low. He returns to it again and again, transforms it from a site of shame into a place of connection and truth. Every performance becomes an act of defiance against the part of him that wants to hide, wants to retreat, wants to give up. He sings about prisons and trains and love and faith. He sings about darkness and the long journey toward light. He sings for the inmates and the outcasts, the forgotten and the condemned. He becomes their voice, their champion, using his platform to remind the world that everyone deserves dignity and the possibility of redemption. The darkness he survived doesn't disappear. Depression still haunts him. The desire for pills never completely leaves. Some days are harder than others. Some moments require every ounce of strength he has just to choose not to relapse. But he keeps choosing. Day after day, year after year, he keeps choosing life over death, honesty over pretense, connection over isolation. June walks beside him through it all, steady and patient and unshakable. She sees him on his worst days, when the demons are loud and the temptation is overwhelming. She sees him on his best days, when the music flows pure and true, and he feels like maybe he's finally becoming the man he was meant to be. She loves him through all of it, not blind to his flaws, but choosing him anyway, choosing them anyway. His daughters grow up watching this transformation. They see their father struggle, see him fail, see him get back up. They learn that redemption isn't a single moment but a daily practice, that strength isn't the absence of weakness but the choice to keep fighting despite it, that love, real love, means staying even when it's hard. The music industry watches this arc with fascination. Johnny Cash becomes a symbol, a proof that comeback is possible, that careers can be rebuilt, that the public will forgive if you're honest about your mistakes and genuine in your efforts to change. But for Johnny, it's never about the career. The success is nice, the accolades are gratifying, but they're not the point. The point is staying clean, being present, creating something honest, connecting with people who need to hear that they're not alone in their darkness. In 1969, he launches a television show. The Johnny Cash Show becomes a platform for artists who are too country for pop, too rock for country, too weird or controversial for mainstream acceptance. He uses his renewed influence to shine light on voices that might otherwise go unheard. It's his way of passing forward the grace he's been given. Bob Dylan appears on the show, a symbol of the counterculture that establishment Nashville views with suspicion. Johnny doesn't care about Nashville's opinion anymore. He cares about good music, honest expression, authentic voice. The episode becomes legendary, two outsiders recognizing each other, honoring each other's commitment to truth over commercial appeal. The years pass, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Johnny's career has ups and downs, periods of commercial success and critical acclaim, followed by stretches where he can't get arrested, musically speaking. The industry changes, country music evolves, and sometimes Johnny is in fashion, and sometimes he's not. But through it all, he stays clean. That's the victory that matters, not the chart positions or the awards or the sold-out shows, the daily choice to face life without chemical escape. Some days it's easy. Some days it's the hardest thing in the world. He keeps choosing. He returns to Folsom Prison several times over the years, performing for new generations of inmates. Each time, he's reminded of that connection he felt in 1968, that understanding that he's not separate from these men, but kin to them. They share the experience of falling, of failing, of facing consequences, and they share the hope of redemption, the belief that change is possible. In the late 90s, when his health begins to fail, and the industry has largely written him off as yesterday's news, Rick Rubin offers him a chance to record again. The American Recordings albums strip everything down to just Johnny and his guitar, his voice, his truth. The production is minimal, the arrangement sparse. It's Johnny Cash at his most naked and vulnerable, nothing to hide behind, nowhere to run. The albums are critically acclaimed, introduce him to a new generation, cement his legend. But more than that, they're a testament to survival. This is what's left after the pills and the prisons and the decades of struggle. A man and his voice, and the stories he needs to tell. He covers Hurt, the 9 Inch Nails song, about pain and self-destruction, and transforms it into a meditation on mortality, on looking back over a life of mistakes and wondering if any of it meant anything. The music video intercuts footage of Johnny young and vital with Johnny old and frail, the passage of time made visceral and heartbreaking. When Trent Reznor, who wrote the song, sees the video, he says it's not his song anymore, it belongs to Johnny now, because Johnny lived it, survived it, earned the right to sing those words with absolute authority. June dies in May 2003, and something breaks in Johnny that can't be repaired. She was his anchor, his reason, his partner in the long fight against darkness. Without her, the world loses color and warmth. He keeps going because that's what she would want, because giving up would dishonor everything they built together. but the joy is gone. 4 months later, Johnny follows her. His body, worn out by decades of hard living and the long, slow work of recovery, finally gives out. He dies at home, surrounded by family, his journey complete. The obituaries will catalogue his achievements, the awards, the hits, the legendary performances. They'll mention the arrests, the addiction, the scandals that marked his career. They'll debate his place in the pantheon of American music, his influence on country and rock and everything that came after. But people who really knew him, who walked with him through the darkness, will remember something else. They'll remember a man who fell hard and got back up, who faced his demons with brutal honesty, who used his platform to champion the forgotten and give voice to the voiceless, who proved that redemption is possible if you're willing to fight for it. They'll remember the handcuffs on that stage in Dallas, the moment everything changed, not because of the arrest itself, but because of what Johnny chose to do next. He could have run, could have made excuses, could have let the shame destroy him. Instead, he faced it, admitted his mistakes, did the work, changed his life. And in changing his life, he gave permission to countless others to believe that they could change theirs. The inmates at Folsom who saw themselves in his story, the addicts who heard him talk honestly about his struggle, the broken and the lost who needed to hear that redemption was possible. That's Johnny Cash's real legacy. Not the music, though the music is magnificent, not the legend, though the legend looms large, but the proof written in the arc of his life that no one is beyond saving, that grace is real, that the darkness doesn't get the final word. The stage where he was arrested is long gone. The State Fair Music Hall in Dallas demolished and rebuilt, but the moment remains, frozen in photographs and memory. Johnny Cash in handcuffs, being led away by police, his career apparently ending in disgrace. Except it wasn't ending. It was beginning. The real career, the honest one, the one that mattered. Everything before Dallas was preparation. Everything after was purpose. He had to break before he could be remade. Had to lose everything before he could find what truly mattered. Had to be brought low before he could be lifted up. The handcuffs were a gift, though he couldn't see it at the time. They stopped him in his tracks, forced him to confront what he was becoming, gave him a chance to choose a different path. Without them, he might have kept going, kept using, kept pretending until the pills killed him or destroyed him completely. Instead, he survived, more than survived. He transformed, became something greater than he'd been before, not despite his brokenness, but because of it. His wounds became his wisdom, his suffering became his strength, his struggle became his message. And on stages around the world, for the rest of his life, Johnny Cash stood in the light and sang about darkness, sang about falling and rising, about being lost and found, about the long, hard road from death to life. He sang with the authority of someone who'd walked that road himself, who knew every step of the journey because he'd made the journey. The man who was arrested on stage in Dallas died that night, in a sense. The performance, the facade, the pretense, all of it ended in handcuffs and shame. But from those ashes, something else emerged, something real and raw and true. Johnny Cash, reborn. Not perfect, never perfect, still struggling, still fighting, still carrying his demons, but fighting them honestly now, in the light, with help and hope and the determination to keep choosing life even when death would be easier. That's the story the handcuffs tell. Not of an ending, but a beginning. Not of failure, but of the courage to face failure and find a way forward. Not of shame, but of the redemption that waits on the other side of shame if you're brave enough to reach for it. If you've made it this far in Johnny Cash's story, if you've walked with him from that stage in Dallas to the light on the other side, then you know something important. You know that darkness doesn't disqualify you from light, that mistakes don't define you unless you let them, that redemption is always possible if you're willing to do the work. Maybe you're fighting your own battles right now. Maybe you've got your own handcuffs, literal or metaphorical. Maybe you've hit your own bottom and you're wondering if there's a way back up. Johnny's life says yes. Emphatically, definitely yes. The way back exists. It's hard, harder than anything you've ever done. It requires brutal honesty, genuine humility, and the willingness to accept help. It requires showing up every day and making the choice, even when you don't feel strong enough, even when the pull of the old patterns is overwhelming. But it's possible. You can change, you can heal, you can build something real from the wreckage of what came before. Johnny Cash proved it, not because he was special or strong or uniquely gifted, but because he was human, flawed and broken and desperate, just like the rest of us. And if he could find his way from that cell in Dallas to the stage at Folsom, from addiction to sobriety, from death to life, then maybe we can too. That's the real reason the handcuffs matter, not as scandal or downfall, but as symbol, a symbol of the moment when everything has to break before it can be rebuilt better, the moment when the old life ends and the new one, the real one, the honest one, becomes possible. Johnny Cash was handcuffed on stage. The reason was darker than anyone knew at the time, deeper than drug smuggling or celebrity scandal. The reason was that he was dying, slowly, behind the performance, and he needed to be stopped before the death became permanent. The handcuffs stopped him, forced him to face himself, gave him a chance to choose differently. And he did. God help him, he did. That choice, made in a cell in Dallas and renewed every day for the rest of his life, that choice made all the difference. If you're struggling today, if you're considering subscribing to this channel to hear more stories of darkness and light, of falling and rising, then do it, because these stories matter. They remind us that we're not alone in our struggles, that others have walked this road before us, that redemption is real. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Join this community of people who believe that the darkness doesn't get the final word, that grace is available, that change is possible. Johnny Cash's handcuffs were the beginning of his real story. What will be the beginning of yours?